Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Shadow of the Erdtree. Today we have a new build, or a classic build actually, brought forward into the DLC. In fact, we've got two major options here. We have the stormcaller version, which is the higher DPS version, and we have the stormblade version, which is significantly faster and also obviously a ranged option for faster, shorter punishes, which is very helpful in this DLC. Either way, what you have here is the base of a Great Katana using Bloodflame Blade. You might remember that we've done builds tied to this concept, but instead a different katana was used, the Nagakiba. By comparison, this is a strength setup compared to Dex, and as it is a heavier hitting weapon, it's causing bigger damage and bigger burst. Despite that, you're still getting the bleed build-up and procs of that and the massive benefits of just Bloodflame Blade. Between the two Ash options, you're running the exact same build, the exact same buffs and stats. You're just swapping the Ash of War depending on what you're about to do and how it's going to work. With the Stormcaller setup, you have a slower, heavy hitting combo. The full thing takes a little bit to get going, but once you start spinning with the katana at the same time as the wind, you become relatively unstoppable, able to trade with bosses. The DPS potential on this is super high and super effective, but because it takes longer to get that combo going, reaching that point where you're unstoppable, it's often hard to actually land the full combo. On the other side then, you have the Stormblade setup. This one is a ranged blast of wind. Ideally though, you'll hit with both the wind and your weapon at the same time, like a shotgun blast, dealing great poise build-up, big raw damage, and bleed as well. What's important here is there's a very quick and effective Ash of War, so you're able to punish shorter windows and also do it from range easily. It also combos really well, landing 2, 3, 4, 5 back to back to back. If you can get that off, the DPS is also seriously strong here too. With new things in the DLC like the Rakshasa armor to greatly enhance the damage, a new talisman like the Enraged Divine Beast, raising the potency of storms, making your Ashes of War, either one you're going to use here, deal 10% more damage. And the new two-handed sword talisman, because we're two-handing the Great Katana of course. It's the original build, modified and enhanced with new items from the DLC, with a new weapon as a baseline as a strength setup. Speaking of that weapon, you got to remember that the Great Katana is very reliable to use irrelevant of these ashes. The base moveset for the light attacks is great with uppercuts and thrusts. The range of that is great, it's a massive weapon. The raw damage is reliable, and with Bloodflame Blade, you've got both fire and bleed from the base moveset anyway. So even if you never used either Ash of War, this is going to feel good and perform good, especially in the open world. So we're really happy with this. It's a nice variety option. It's two builds in one, swapping between the ashes based on what you're going to find more useful. And while the Stormblade setup is more reliable in this DLC, if you can, you should try to get that Stormcaller in and off because it's that higher DPS option. So with both builds kind of explained and showcased, let's go through the build and explain how you can run this yourself. So as usual, let's kick this off with the weapon itself. This is the Great Katana, and we're running it in heavy. When you do that, it gets a B scaling in strength, and as a katana, it comes with base blood loss build-up. And then you can swap on the Stormblade Ash of War or Stormcaller based on what you need to do or what you're planning on doing next. Keep in mind that the massive relevance of this build is the fact that you can buff up the weapon, and it's hard to beat a better buff than Bloodflame Blade. So that's obviously key to this build, and enhancing that damage can be done by leveling your faith even higher. To get our new Great Katana, a new weapon type of the DLC, it's very easy. In the very first region of the Gravesite Plains, you're going to head north along the main road, eventually coming to the nearest grace, which is the Great Bridge North. In the center of this lake, you have the item on a body. You can run up and pick it up. Technically, you may be stopped by the Ghost Flame Dragon that's there. You could just run in there, grab the sword, and get out. It truly is that easy. Next, we have the seal and the incantations that we're going to choose to use. Here we're actually using a claw mark seal compared to what you might imagine, where we might be using, say, the Dragon Communion seal. The reason we use the claw mark seal is because it scales with strength. That's going to enhance the potency of your incantations for damage, but also the Bloodflame Blade, because it's going to cause better scaling with a mix of faith and strength. But the main three are of course Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Bloodflame Blade. This weapon buff provides the Curse Blood, so it's mix of fire and bleed build-up. So Flame Grant Me Strength is doubling effectiveness here by raising physical and fire affinity. Then of course Golden Vow, it's attack and defense. And then it's up to you what you want to run on top of that. Because we're running higher faith than you might imagine, we do actually have some really good options. Between Blessing of the Erdtree, which would require 38 faith, or Protection of the Erdtree, these can be incredible options for the final boss where you want holy damage reduction. Classics like Bestial Vitality can actually help you tank an extra hit during a fight. There's going to be a lot of utility here because you have reasonably high faith, so keep that in mind and use what's relevant for whatever fight you're about to do. Next up, we have the armor. Starting with the white mask, of course, course, we're working in bleed with the blood flame, so getting some extra attack power when a bleed proc occurs, obviously easy to want. After that is what you should expect: the Rakshasa armor, 3 pieces: the chest, the gloves, and the legs. As usual, this is going to increase the damage you deal, but also increases the damage you take compared to other armor sets. This would suggest that it's damage negation, but it's not necessarily the case. If you look at the stats, it's noticeably lower in terms of the protection that it provides, except for the poise in the same armor class. But it is incredibly worth it for the damage increase that it provides, and that damage increase that you take it's just not relevant. To get the armor set, you need to defeat the boss here, the Eastern Nameless Mausoleum. As a very fast guy, because I've talked about this quite a bit, to get to that area you need to come to the Shadow Keep. By progressing through the Shadow Keep, you make your way onto this high bridge, and about here is going to be a ladder leading down. At the bottom of that ladder is a hidden sewer entrance past the water. Through there's an illusion wall you can break in a painting room, and that brings you to this coffin. Get in, and it'll take you to the castle watering hole. From here, you head southeast to the Recluse's River upstream, follow the cliff's edge until you get about here. You cross over to where you see the lights and the bird golems and start climbing down the cliff. Now you're down by the water, you follow that east, and before long, you'll hit the Nameless Mausoleum. And with the boss defeat, you'll get a new weapon and this armor set. So now it's time for the Talisman. We have some interesting choices here, 2 new ones. The old ones though, Shadow of Alexander to boost the attack power of your Ashes of War, and the Lords of Blood's Exaltation, which is going to increase your attack power after that bleed proc, just like the White Mask. The 2 new ones then, we have the Enraged Divine Beast. This raises the potency of your storms by 10%. So Storm Ashes of War, Stormcaller, Stormblade, that's a 10% increase. This is a new talisman that you get by defeating the Divine Beast. When you take the Dancing Lion's Remembrance and trade that, you can actually pick this talisman, and that's how you get it. Pretty straightforward. Finally though, we have the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, which is going to enhance the attacks with two-handed weapons. Since we're only ever going to be two-handing our sword, even when using the Ash of War or whatever, it's just consistently the best damage increase we can pick. It's also an easy one to get. You get it in the Temple Town Ruins at the top. The nearest grace is the Temple Town Ruins, and it's in the lower section of the Ancient Rower Ruins area. If you're unaware of how to reach that, you come to the Morth Ruins and come to this water here, passing through the cave. That brings you out here where we've got these poison pools. You follow this, go under this natural bridge, and then you've got the Ancient Ruins base. Following this valley down, eventually you come to the correct area. To enter the Temple Town Ruins, you might struggle to find your way in. On the south side, there's kind of a crack in the wall. You head through there, climb up onto the side of the ruins, follow it around, eventually coming to the end, where we have the talisman just waiting to be picked up. For our next topic, we have the Wondrous Physick. Pretty straightforward stuff here. The Opaline Hard Tier is a classic option. It's going to boost your damage negation and also counter the weaker armor we're wearing in Rakshasas. But then also we have the Blood-Sucking Crack Tier, a new one. This temporarily increases your attack power, but will drain health over time. This is really potent, and I'm pretty much running it whenever I can. But if you don't like that drain, you could go for something like Successive Hit Build-Up or Charged Heavies if you're working those in. But this is obviously one of the best options you can have. To get it, you'll need to kill the golem that's blocking the ruins of in the castle watering hole. As I've just explained, you need to get through this Shadow Keep, climb down the ladder here, go into the coffin, it'll bring you here. But you're also going to need one specific item. That is one hefty furnace pot. This is necessary to wake up the furnace golem to activate it so you can kill it. If you do not have the recipe for that, come to the 3-path cross in the first region, come north to the Great Bridge North Grace, and then head south down near the water under the bridge to this shack. Inside the rundown Traveler's Rest is the recipe to craft these. Then with one crafted and ready to go, you can bring it back to the ruins of Unti. By approaching the golem that's not active, there's some ruins to the north here you can climb up to, and it brings you around to this balcony. Throw the furnace pot into the basket above the golem and it'll activate, and now you can attack it, defeat it, and get that crystal tier. So that's how that's done. That brings us to the last section. We're going to talk about the stats. At level 150, you might have slightly different stats than me based on whatever starting class that you did, but I'll explain things and how you can make adjustments. What I have here is 60 vigor, 50 mind, 20 endurance, 54 strength, 18 dex, that's important. We dump intelligence, we have 25 faith, and then as many points in that. Beyond that, whatever you can have. So I have 43, you might have 41, and then 10 arcane. Let's explain why we have high levels in faith and not more in strength. You could choose to raise the strength further and have the 25 faith instead, and that will result in a minor damage increase. You'll have roughly 1617 AR with 54 strength, two-handing with say 41 faith, and blood flame. While at 66 strength and 25 faith, you'll have 1644 by comparison. So that's about a 1.6% damage increase. But then you have way lower faith, reducing your potential for good incantation options. If you had no plans to use any incants, Fair enough, but that flexibility is a big deal. Again, Blessing of the Erdtree, Protection of the Erdtree, these are top tier for the final boss, for example, and I definitely take those over a 1.6% damage increase. But it's your choice. The flexibility and benefits of incantations are really good, but you could care about that slight raw damage increase, and if so, go for it. But there you have it. That is our 2 builds in 1 video. The Great Katana is a baseline and a mix of Stormblade and Stormcaller to great effect. In recap, Stormcaller is the higher DPS option, but much harder to land, especially in this DLC, where Stormblade is an incredible range punish that you'd ideally shotgun blast into the target at close range, but it opens up new punish windows even with the short punish windows of this DLC. The fact that you can swap between them means if one's a better option than the other for the next fight or whatever you're doing, you can swap them and there's no real downside. That is honestly awesome, and even better, you don't have to rely on these ashes. The base weapon with the buff going is super good anyway. So I hope you've enjoyed the build. If you have, do be sure to drop a like. If you guys have any advice to improve the build, feel free to drop that in the comments. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.